Welcome to the Plant Cunning Podcast,
where we explore a relationship to plants, other people, and the mysteries of nature.
Coming to you from the high Allegheny Plateau in central New York.
We are your hosts, A.C. Staubel
and Isaac Hill. This is Episode 1, What is Plant Cunning? Well, hello and welcome to the first episode of the Plant Cunning Podcast.
Hello, I'm AC.
And I'm Isaac.
And we're glad to have you here on the first episode.
So, on this episode, we're going to talk about what the Plant Cunning Podcast is and will be, what our intentions for it are, and a little bit about ourselves, about AC and myself, and what our backgrounds are.
Yeah, and I guess we should start by defining what we mean by plant cunning.
Yeah, so the word cunning comes from the Old Norse kunna, to know, and is related to the English can. So, have the ability to do something. I can do this. Or ken, which is like an old English and Scottish word. So, I ken you by your shape is an old lyric. I know you by your shape. So, cunning has now a connotation of deceit, but it really means ingenuity, craft, skill, and knowledge. And so for us, plant cunning is knowledge, skill, craft, and ability in working with plants. And that's one of the main things that we're going to talk about on this podcast. We're going to talk to a lot of people who have a lot of ability and knowledge about plants.
Yeah, we're going to bring together different plant cunning folk, like farmers and herbalists and permaculturists and mages and people who have all sorts of skill and knowledge of the natural world, and we're going to try to bring together some different ideas and thoughts and open our minds to new terrain that we've never explored.
Yeah, so the old community healers, the folk herbalists and folk magicians of Europe and early America were called cunning men and cunning women, or cunning folk. And that's because they had knowledge and ability of how to heal people using whatever methods they had, whether that was herbs or magic. And so we really want to bring together those strands again and explore lots of different ways of working with plants, working with the spirit world and with our own spiritual journeys. So that's one of the things that I'm excited to do, is to talk with all these people who I personally respect and admire and can learn from.
Yeah, same with me. It's really exciting to have an opportunity to interview some of my mentors and folks that I'm really interested or really proud of the work that they're doing. And one of my main intentions with this podcast is to highlight some of those folks in my life or that I know about in the world that are doing some great work in the field of plants and fungi and social change and all sorts of things related to that.
And to add to that, I want to especially look at all these different kinds and different ways that people use plants and work with plants and work with spiritual energies and healing energies, because there's a lot of different ways to go about this, and everyone creates their own synthesis out of what they've learned and what they've practiced. And so being able to look at all these different people and have them share their stories and their ways, their practices with us, then we can take what is useful and add that to our repertoire, add that to our personal synthesis. Or just have an interesting story. We can let them do what they do and we can do what we do, but it's always interesting to me to listen to how other people form relationships with plants and how they work with plants and how they go about their spiritual journeys.
Yeah, and by making a podcast, making a public forum, perhaps some of these ideas can be cross-pollinated, and maybe folks listening to the podcast can incorporate some of these into their own life, and we can all become more wise in the ways of the plants and fungi in the natural world. And so I think it'll offer a lot of inspiration for folks. So that's one of my intentions too with the Plant Cunning podcast.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest in plants these days, and homesteading and permaculture and herbalism, especially as these larger social institutions are starting to crumble in a lot of ways. And there's also a lot of interest in magic and in spirituality and a lot of different forms of spirituality. And a lot of times people on one side don't know about other people on the other side. Mm-hmm. So I want to look at lots of different people from lots of different traditions and viewpoints, and see what they have in common and what they have in different. So do you think we should maybe talk a little bit about who we are and why we're doing this?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what brought you into the plant world, into the green world?
Well, I've always loved nature. As a child, I would spend a lot of time exploring the woods around my house and hanging out by the stream beds and picking wild weed bouquets and things like that. But it wasn't really until my 20s that I found plants as medicine, and that's really what got me hooked into studying plants and being more interested in it. I've always had asthma, and a few of my plant folk friends got me into herbs that can be useful for the tightness of breath and coughing up mucus and things like that. And I had such good luck with mullein and with lobelia and coltsfoot and even kitchen herbs like thyme and ginger that I really wanted to learn more. And it got me hooked in learning more about herbs. And I started working at an herb farm called Tweefontein Herb Farm in the Hudson Valley of New York in 2012. And we would bring our herbal wares to the city, and we would farm all of the herbs that we used in our products. And I realized going to the city with all these folks coming up to the stand, looking to me as the herb farmer, they asked me all these questions about their health, and I realized how much I just didn't know about the world of herbal medicine. And that is what really set me on the path to become an herbalist. And since then, since 2012, I've been studying herbs with various teachers. And most recently in Ithaca, I studied at the Northeast School of Botanical Medicine with Seven Song, who is the herbalist, the clinical herbalist and botanist there. And I learned tons about plants and medicine and how to identify and wildcraft and make my own medicine. And I've finally got the confidence to be able to treat other people and take on clinical clients. And so it's sort of one of those things that once you start studying, you never stop. You know, there's no herbalist that I know and respect that is like, oh, I'm done. I know everything there is to know
Yeah.
about plant medicine. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this podcast, is to be able to interview some of these teachers that have really put the 30, 40 plus years of study under their belts. So that's pretty much my short story of what brought me to herbs and what's keeping me there.
Yeah, so who are you studying with now?
I am taking the Herbal Medicine for Women course with Aviva Ram online right now, and that's been keeping me busy with my herb studies.
Cool. And so what's the big news? We've got a farm now, Cohosh Creek, and
that is the big news. Yeah, many year dream and goal of many years has finally come to fruition, and Isaac and I have settled at a farm in central New York in this beautiful rural area. We have 7 acres to play and plant on, and a house and barns. The barns can be used for events and workshops and conferences in the future. And we've named it Cohosh Creek for all of the blue cohosh that's growing in the back along the streams. And it's a beautiful spot, and we're really excited about the garden. With the coronavirus this year, we had a halt to all of our festivals and fairs that I sell my herbal wares at, and we're able to spend a lot of time here, which was great for a first year farm to really set down our roots and clean up the place and get a lot of plants planted. And I'm super happy with how the garden came out in just our first year, and it's going to be so exciting to see the trees that we planted and the perennial herbs come back year after year and see how it develops.
Yeah, and we wild harvested a lot out here too. There's quite a bounty. Made a lot of medicine. What are some of your favorite things that you harvested and made medicine out of this year, or ate?
Yeah, the things that are coming to mind are really the fungi. We've had such wonderful harvests of reishi mushroom in the hemlock forest near our house. And right in the backyard, we have morels growing in the ancient apple and hawthorn orchard. And the hawthorn flower and berry were extremely bountiful. We have just like a whole hedge and a whole little orchard of wild hawthorn trees. I've never seen so many hawthorn in one place. It's a wonderful heart medicine. It's one of the herbs that I use the most in my practice. And so I was really excited about that.
Yeah. There's like a really old hawthorn at the edge of the property. It might be, I don't know how old it is, but it's got to be at least 100 years, but probably maybe 200. I don't know, but it's a wonderful grandmother tree.
Yeah, it's where I go to sit and be comforted by nature. I'll like sit and cry under her protective thorny branches, and she embraces me lovingly.
Yeah.
Another herb that we harvested from the fields around our house is boneset, which is good for this cold and flu season approaching. So I'm happy to be able to stock up on that because it's not something I've really worked with a lot in the past, but excellent for cold and flu and respiratory ailments and helping to reduce a fever. So
yeah,
that's another herb that I'm excited about that's here. And we've got lots of wild blue vervain, which is such a magical plant. The wild apples are in season, and we've been going around and tasting all of them. You've been really excited about the apples.
Well, yeah, there's actually an old orchard. It's maybe 100-year-old orchard, and all of the trees are overgrown. But I think they were grafted varieties, and I've been trying to figure out what kinds they are. I think I got a couple named, but
yeah, they're delicious.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to fix them up and rehabilitate the orchard, or if I'll just graft them onto a new rootstock and start a new orchard. But it's a lot of fun. They're really good apples. So many really different flavors and shapes and sizes compared to Macintosh and Red Delicious. Though I think I found a Macintosh in there.
Yeah, there's definitely some Goldens and yeah. So it feels really good for me to be settled in a spot in one place for more than a few months at a time. My herb business is actually called Traveling Herb Farmer, and I've been adventuring around the country off and on and harvesting things from the wild and working at different farms and traveling around the country in my mini school bus. And so having a place to set roots and to really ground down has been such a wonderful experience for me. So I'm really excited about Cohosh Creek and being in this area and seeing what comes from the farm here. I feel like there's just so many possibilities.
Yeah, and stationary or traveling herb farmer.
Stationary herb farmer doesn't have the same ring to it as traveling herb farmer. But I'll still be traveling in the winter, I'm sure, because once you have that travel bug in your system, you just don't get rid of it too easily. And so we already are planning our winter adventures.
Yeah.
Once the herbs and plants have been put to rest for the season.
Well, it's a long winter here. It gets really cold. Lots of snow. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We may not even be able to travel this winter.
Yeah, we'll see with the global pandemic what pans out for us in the travel plans for this year. But
Yeah.
yeah. So what about you, Isaac? What about what brought you to the plant path, and tell us about your journey?
Well, I was homeschooled, unschooled, actually, too. And we had a big woods behind our house. It was actually acres and acres of woods, and our house was connected to it. So I could I could run out in the woods anytime I wanted, pretty much. And that's what I did. I was out there playing in the creek and playing with plants and, making up imaginary adventures, fighting dragons and so on. But I was encouraged to learn what I was interested in. So when I was about 9, I did a course on, self-guided course on edible wild plants, and also about building a pond. So I dug like a little pond and put plants in it, and also started IDing and eating and using wild plants at about 9. And since then I've always been a forager and interested in the plants, and had a lot of fun, and it's a rejuvenating experience for me to be out in nature in the woods. So since then, I've been doing that, but it kind of ebbed a little bit when I was in high school, because I did go to public high school. I still foraged blackberries and made blackberry pie and stuff like that. Made poke salad. But it was after college that I got into permaculture, and permaculture was this amazing umbrella for all these different things. It was a design system, so I got to incorporate planning and design with fruit trees and bushes, and then all of the fermentation and wild edible foraging skills, herbalism, that all kind of went with it. So since I was about 21, 22, I've been really into permaculture and fermentation and all of that too, and propagation of plants. Permaculture was definitely, it was kind of like an initiation for me when I took my PDC. I took that with Daryl Fry out at Three Sisters Farm in western Pennsylvania in 2012, I think. But I don't even know if I necessarily consider myself a permaculturist anymore. It's a good skill to have, and it's back there, and it informs a lot of what I do. But it's a good catch-all term for what I do, because I'm a generalist. I like working with plants in lots of different ways. Propagation, eating them. I'm a cook. I love cooking, making nutritious meals out of plants, a lot of different plants. I like to eat as many species of plants as I can. And I think that's the way that we're supposed to eat. But I also, I propagate plants. I do a little bit of design. I mean, I'm doing design here. I'm really excited about that, getting to plan out the forest garden and the crop plans and everything like that, and working with the plants. I like doing the chop and drop, and all of that.
Yeah, it seems to me like you've really carried a lot of the permaculture ideals into the work that you do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also a musician though, so that took up a lot of my 20s. I had my home base where I worked on I designed a permaculture garden for my mother, and worked on that for about 10 years while I was traveling the country playing music with my band, The Hills and the Rivers. And that's how I met AC. Mm-hmm. And we got together and started scheming, and so now we're here in central New York, and I was actually born about an hour and a half from here, and it's right in between our mothers.
Which was a very good political family move to be equidistant from both of our mothers.
Yeah. I think we're a little farther from Pittsburgh, but that's all right. So this is our first year here, and we're doing a lot of planting. I planted a lot of trees and shrubs and herbs, and also discovered so many wonderful plants that are here already. There's blackberries, raspberries, choke cherries, June berries, apples everywhere, hawthorn, nanny berries. I was just eating some of those the other day. They're very delicious. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm also interested in magic and in spirituality. I mean, I think everyone is on a spiritual journey in a way, and mine has been interesting. I met a student of Richard Rose, who was a West Virginia mystic, who died in 2000, something like that. I met him when I was in college, and that's kind of informed a lot of my my spiritual journey, my spiritual path. But I'm also really interested in in a lot of different traditions, and in the Western esoteric tradition, and folk magic, and hoodoo, and tantra and Hindu traditions. There are so many wonderful traditions out there, but I think it's also really important to explore one's roots, and for me that is folk herbalism, folk magic, and the Western esoteric tradition. So that's a little bit about me. Is there anything else I didn't really talk about, AC?
Well, we do have a dog.
Oh yeah, we have a dog.
We have a dog named Ollie. He's a puppy. He's a dog in training, really.
Yeah. He's he's an Amish dog. That's another thing about living here. We're right down the street from some Amish folks, and it's really interesting to see how they live, and it's kind of heartening. They have a lot of social limits that I wouldn't necessarily want, but I'm from Mennonite stock. My mom's side is Mennonite, so there's a certain kinship. I have some, way back there we're related, but yeah, it's really nice to be out here in the country. And our dog is an Amish dog, mm-hmm. And he's about a year and a few months old. He still likes to bite ankles, mm-hmm. and bark, and pull rotting deer parts out of the woods.
As he does. Yes. He's a good cuddle bug, so we'll keep him.
Yeah, no, he's a good dog. So that's a little bit about us. I guess we should maybe say where you can find our stuff. So my music is on Spotify and YouTube and everything. The Hills and the Rivers is my band. We're not like a very super successful band, but we traveled all around the country for years and played a lot of shows and some festivals, and it's been a lot of fun. And then I put out a solo album under Isaac Hill. It's called Allegheny Elegies. I put that out in April. And that's under The Hills and the Rivers at thehillsandrivers.bandcamp.com and on Spotify and everywhere else.
Yeah, and my business is called The Traveling Herb Farmer, and my website is travelingherbfarmer.com, and I also have an Instagram and Facebook under Traveling Herb Farmer as well. And a website for Cohosh Creek will be coming soon.
Yeah.
That'll be cohoshcreek.com.
Yeah, I'm really excited to continue interviewing people for this podcast. We have a few interviews already recorded, which we'll put out. We're going to start with we're going to start talking with Mark Williams, who's an ethnobotanist, and then some magical herbalists and magic practitioners, some natural magic practitioners, to start this series out. But we're going to talk to lots of different folks from lots of different backgrounds. I'm going to talk to lots of herbalists, permaculturists,
farmers,
plant propagators, nursery people, mm-hmm. ethnobotanists, and Yeah, and probably, fungi people too.
Mm-hmm.
Fungi are not really plants at all, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But they, for a lot of people, they're part of the same. They're part of the same group. And when you're into plants, you eventually get into mushrooms too.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk to some mushroom people, and we'll talk to people of various spiritual traditions.
Yeah, there's so many things about the natural world, and especially fungi, that just blow my mind.
Yeah.
And I am super excited to explore some new terrain that I've never explored as a traveler and as an explorer. This is a way for me as a homebody now, as the stationary herb farmer, to be able to let my mind go out into the world. And you all are welcome to join us on that journey.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed this first episode, and I hope you'll listen to the rest of our episodes and our continuing episoding.